Welcome everyone to the Applied Information Show. We've got a cool show today. We've got Chief Jackie Gibbs with us today, which it's always a pleasure having you on the show, Chief Jackie Gibbs.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
And today we're talking about how green to scene technology is improving firefighter safety. So Chief Jackie Gibbs is going to take us through a whole bunch of different things, and we're going to see where the show goes. We haven't planned too much either, which we absolutely love. So I want to thank you for joining us today, and just welcome everybody. We're going to be putting out a YouTube link as well, so if you want to go watch everything in high definition, please go over to YouTube. And on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Jessica Shin, who's going to go and give us some more details.
Hey everyone, like Peter said, welcome to today's show. I just posted in the chat the YouTube link. If you all want to view in HD, that's definitely going to give you a better watching experience. And then we are going to do Q&A throughout the show today, so feel free to pop questions into the chat in Zoom, or using the Q&A button down there on the Zoom buttons. And then anything else, just feel free to ask me whatever, if y'all can't hear or anything like that. And we will be recording this on our YouTube, and you'll be able to access that at a later time as well. So back to you, Peter.
Thanks, Jessica. Really appreciate it. So, you know, one of the questions I learned from Chief Jackie Gibbs is, tell us a little bit of the story about Chief Jackie Gibbs.
Well, great to be here with you, Peter. I really enjoy this opportunity to speak with some colleagues in the fire department and in the fire service. And how I got my start was I spent 41 years with the Marietta Fire Department. I worked my way through the ranks, starting out on the tailboard is what we used to call it, and worked my way up and finally made it to the fire chief's office. And I served as the City of Marietta Fire Chief for 18 years. And a lot of that time as a chief officer, I was a member of the International Association of Fire Chiefs. So we're glad to have our folks and members here from the International Association of Fire Chiefs. And through my career, I really developed a passion for firefighter safety. And that came from a lot of work in fire prevention, where we dealt so much with safety and fire prevention for the public. And one just held hand with the other, because the concern is eliminating the injuries and death to our firefighters who are out there serving the public. And that's where, you know, my passion came from, and that's what led to me coming to work with Applied Information and continuing that work, because one of the areas that there's really just no excuse for is the number of firefighters that are injured or killed in traffic accidents annually. So spending time working on that, working with this technology, has just been really great for me and very rewarding, and something that I've thoroughly enjoyed since I retired. And
you were working with the City of Marietta, and maybe tell us why the City of Marietta was special, you know, how your relationship with the city evolved over time with the traffic department and so on, just to explain to people how a good relationship should be within the city.
Well, we were so fortunate in Marietta. Marietta's a city of about 60,000 people at night. In the daytime, that population swells greatly because we have a heavy business area and a lot of industry in Marietta. And Marietta's a growing suburb of the city of Atlanta, so we were just part of that growth. I was raised in Marietta, grew up there, and so having the opportunity to work in a community where you grew up with a lot of people, that really laid a foundation. It didn't take long as you work your way up in the ranks to realize that for a fire department to be successful, and successful in the budget arena and successful in the community service, you have to be connected to those other departments and those other colleagues, because they're all working together. We're all sharing the same pot of money. For this, the simple fact is there's only one budget, and it goes to all the departments, and everybody has to work together to give and take. We were just so fortunate in Marietta that we had a great traffic department. A lot of cities have good traffic departments. We had a great traffic department and a great traffic engineer. And he cared about what traffic was, and the public cares about it. They sound off loudly if they are unhappy with the traffic. And Marietta being part of Atlanta, the Atlanta suburbs, has a lot of traffic. And so it just was really one of those things that we just held hands on and decided that something needed to be done. We had tried other systems in the past, and they just seemed to never work right. And the traffic folks had a lot of trouble in keeping the system up. And so he actually found Applied Information and started to look at it from an information technology system for the traffic department. And that's what originally our system was for the traffic department to be connected to their traffic cabinets. And then he began to look at other product lines and brought it to us and to the city management and said, I think this system will really benefit the fire department. And we went through the system and we learned from Applied Information and from our traffic engineers what a super benefit it was for firefighter safety and the difference that it made in our ability to deliver services to the citizens, because we could get to the scene so much faster and in so much more of a controlled situation. We reduced our risk dramatically because we had preemption on the fire trucks that gave us control of the traffic system and allowed us to get through the traffic, stopped all of the citizens that were around us, and our fire apparatus operators could simply just concentrate on driving the fire truck. They didn't have to try to figure out how to get through things. So our traffic guys were really the ones that helped us get started in the system and really brought the benefit to the fire department. So we were just very fortunate, Marietta.
And before that, you also had an optical system. Am
Yes,
I correct in saying that? And you obviously had experience with how preemption systems worked. And granted, it's old technology and probably an aging system, but can you explain maybe just a little bit of information to the people online on what is an optical system and what is the system that you guys got?
Well, the older system was optical. It had a strobe light, sort of an arrangement mounted on the fire truck, and then a receiver up on the traffic signal, and those two had to meet. And that was very difficult to maintain. It did work, and it could work to your benefit, but that technology was just very difficult to maintain, and our traffic department really got no benefit out of it. But so they were, it was just lower on the priority list for them to maintain because it was just sort of out of sight, out of mind. And oftentimes, if you're driving a fire truck, you didn't really realize if the system worked or not, and so you didn't know what to report. And with the new technology, if you could, I think we have a slide there, that, Peter, that we could bring up to show how the new system and how the new technology works for us today. And in this slide, you see the fire truck there under the approaching the intersection, and you see a dashed line coming out of the fire truck pointed to the traffic cabinet. That is a radio system there that is one method of communication. So you're not relying on optics. It's a radio communication that talks to the cabinet. And then that comes to the traffic signal and helps to maintain control of the traffic signal. The other way, dot number 1, is a dashed line that goes up to a cell tower. So you have redundant communications that goes to the cloud and then back to the traffic signal and gives you control of the traffic signal. Now, having a redundant communication is something that everybody in the fire service appreciates, because we had 2 of everything. I mean, we have to, when the fire department gets on an emergency scene, we have to be able to work. When we're getting to the emergency scene, everything has to work. So having the new technology with redundant communications, that if one doesn't work or one works faster, you've got more fast response from the traffic signal, and you've got quality response too. The cell signal gives you far more range, far more distance. It goes around buildings, it goes around curves, it goes through trees, so you aren't blocked. From the old technology, something could get in the way of the signal and you didn't have any preemption. With redundant technology using radio and cell, You've got redundant technology that's going to work, and it's going to work every time, and it's going to work at a further distance than the older technology. So it really moved us into today's technology as far as getting on the scene quicker and much safer.
You want to explain a little bit of the topography of Marietta and a large area around, Georgia, just to explain why that's so important.
Well, Atlanta's the city of trees, and we're part of Atlanta, and we have tons and tons of trees. We also have a downtown with multi-story buildings, a lot of curves, a lot of curvy roads, and a lot of hills. And without that cell technology, we just couldn't get to that traffic signal fast enough to control those signals. So with this, with the glance system is what it's called, from applied information, it goes around buildings. The hills don't matter, the curves don't matter, tunnels don't matter. Nothing matters. That cell signal is going to work, and it's going to get you that green light faster and more effectively.
And one of the things that we found from a lot of different cities as well recently is the traffic controllers have got a very long pedestrian timer to them. So we're sitting right now at the IATL, the Infrastructure Automotive Technology Laboratory, and around us we've got 120 traffic signals, but in the city of Alpharetta, they had very long ped clearance times. And what that does is it affects the priority or the preemption, because they'll have an extra 15 seconds of clearing the ped out. So what we end up doing is providing the signal to the traffic controller at about 45 seconds before the signal, before the actual emergency vehicle arrives. What that does is it prepares everything so that by the time the emergency vehicle arrives, it gets a green signal. Now, 45 seconds away is 4,000, 5,000 feet away. Radio links don't make it that distance.
Right.
And that's the key aspect. And I mean, you've recently been working on a project in the Southeast, which maybe you want to just talk us through that.
Well, it's a project that we've been working on with one of our larger cities, and it is an extremely heavily traveled corridor. In fact, it's one of the busiest corridors in the southeastern United States. It's easy to say that. And one of the things that we were able to show in this test bed was that even at 10:30 in the morning, a fire truck running emergency, as they pulled out of the station, the first signal that they hit showed that they were just going very slow. And it showed the light turn, and our data system that we provide back to the customer gives the fire chief the ability to look at how the fire trucks are doing. They can actually evaluate their performance. And so we see the fire truck leave the fire station, we see them picking up speed because the light is green. Before they can even get to that next signal, they do exactly what any fire chief would want. They slow down to about 30 miles an hour and make sure that they have control of the intersection. With the glance system, everybody gets a red light with the exception of the fire truck who's got green. You can tell by the way that they approach the intersection that they have control, and then they are accelerating after they come out of the intersection.
How do you know this?
I mean, it's the data that comes from the glance system shows you every step of the way the connectivity to the signal. It shows you when the signal saw the fire truck, how fast they were going, which direction they're coming from. As they pass the traffic signal, it shows you how long they get there, shows you their ETA to the traffic signal. You watch the light turn green through the phasing of the system, and then you see them accelerate to the next signal down this large corridor. It's a large boulevard, so it's heavily traveled, but it's a big road. So they're able to get back up to speed. They see the green light, and you can tell they see the green light because they continue their acceleration up until right before the light, where they slow down just a little bit, make sure they've got control of the intersection, and then they're on to the next traffic signal. And you can see the response time going down for any department that puts the glance system in. You can see the response time going down, but that gives a fire chief who's looking at the data confidence that his firefighter engineers are doing exactly what they should do, They are maintaining control of the vehicle. They are watching their intersections. They can fully control the intersection because they see everyone stopped, and they have confidence that somebody's not going to bolt out into the intersection thinking they've got a green light, because they don't have a green light, they have a red light. Many times we worry in the fire service about the public, and not only are we afraid we're going to be in an accident, we're afraid we're going to cause an accident. And with the glance system, it gives the public in the other directions of travel coming to the intersection a red light. Lots of accidents are caused by emergency vehicles coming up to a red signal. The first person that's approaching from one of the opposite directions has a green light. They see the fire truck or the ambulance or police car, and they stop. Well, the person behind them is not looking at them, they're looking at the signal. They see a green bulb, a green light, and they're still at speed, and then suddenly they look up and realize the car in front of them has stopped. So there have been lots of accidents caused basically because the person in front saw the emergency vehicle, did what they were supposed to do, and stopped.
Here's a question for you. In the city of Marietta, they've had the system deployed for roughly 4 years.
Yeah, almost 5.
Almost
actually.
5 years.
Yes, sir.
How many accidents have they now had since they've had the system deployed?
They haven't had any, no intersection accidents at all. And those are the things. The other ones are the near misses that we didn't cause, that are, you can't even measure. You can't measure what didn't happen. So there are countless accidents that were prevented because the signal gave everybody in an opposing direction a red light and stopped them and gave the fire truck the green light so that they could go on through the intersection. And there are other things about our system, and I'm anxious to get there, and I know we'll get there, about the integration that's provided with other systems. And you just mentioned it with the pedestrian signals. And that is important to every fire chief, and I strongly encourage you to pay attention to this piece of it. If you want to try to justify one of these systems, the best way to do it is have multiple departments that can draw benefit from it. If you are standing in front of your elected officials or city management and you've got another department like the traffic department that you can show benefit to the traffic department, the fire department, EMS, ambulance providers,
transit,
law enforcement, transit, you've got this entire line of your colleagues lined up, and everybody benefits. That benefits the taxpayers. That is easier to sell by a long margin to our elected officials and city management, because they're trying to justify things in their own mind for the public. They're trying to tell the public this is where your tax dollars are going, and this benefits the public because you have completely changed the dynamic in emergency response in your community. You've made the emergency response less of a chaotic footprint on the traffic system and on traffic in general. And
what do you mean by that?
Well,
I mean, what do you mean by, because a lot of traffic engineers would come back and say, well, when I put a preemption system in, it messes up all my traffic.
And the first time I heard that, it just stunned me because, well, they've obviously never driven a fire truck. Anybody that's driven a fire truck knows that if you're running emergency without a preemption system, you are creating a chaotic mess. People are going every which way. A lot of citizens don't know what to do. They panic, they get up on curbs, they run up on the sidewalk, they stop dead in the middle of the road in front of you for and they don't get out of the way, they just stop dead in the road. So they create a huge mess. Well, anybody can think about it. A chaotic system is way worse, for lack of a better word, than a laminar system, one that flows smoothly. So if the fire truck, well before they get to the traffic signal, the traffic intersection, if everybody else gets a red light, they simply stop. The light stays green where the fire truck is coming. That flushes all of that traffic. They may not ever even hear you coming behind them. And it flushes that traffic out of the system. You go through the light immediately transitions back to its original configuration, and it goes right back into its sequence. So you've completely smoothed out the system. There's no chaos. And we teach our firefighter apparatus operators that when you're driving a fire truck, always use your turn signals, because the turn signal tells the system which way you're going. every traffic light around you knows you're running emergency. So they're sitting there waiting for you to come their way. Basically, they're on point. If you will use your turn signal, by the time you get to an intersection and turn, you're going to have a green light in front of you.
How difficult is it to actually get the guys that are driving the vehicles to use their turn signals? Because I know that was one of the things that we did, I think was for you and a couple out of the fire chiefs, is they actually said, can you guys look at whether or not they're using the turn signals, because we don't actually know.
Yeah, we didn't know until we put the glance system in, and now we do know whether they're using them or not. It was easy for me because my training officer taught us that there were some rules of driving emergency. One of those rules was know where you're going. That was rule number one. The worst fire driver, in my opinion, is one that doesn't know where they're going, doesn't know their streets. Because, in my opinion, you're the definition of a distracted driver because you don't know where you're going. So it was drilled into us. Know where you're going, slow down at the intersections and make sure you have control of it just for safety. Know, slow, show the public which way you're going by using your turn signals, and then proceed with caution. So it was drilled into my head: know, slow, show, proceed with caution.
I hope everybody's writing this down.
That was one of the 4-step things that you better know if you were taking your promotional test for the fire apparatus operator in the city of Marietta. You better know, and you also had to know your streets. So I encourage any chief, and again, my passion is about firefighter safety and the public safety. And these are, in my mind, basic principles that every fire department should have. They should have knowledge-based tests so that a person proves their abilities, their knowledge, their skills, and their abilities to get that promotion. And I think it's incredibly important that the fire service, not only do we go out and provide public safety, we help people in times of need, but we also don't negatively impact them while we're doing it. It's terribly important to do it safely. And with a system like this, you can do more for your community than you can spend an awful lot of money doing other things and not achieve near the benefit that you can with an emergency preemption system.
All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into a little video of the city that we're sitting in right now, city of Alpharetta, to show them, to just show a little bit of this, what they've been achieving in the city. So I'm going to show a short video on that coming up here.
I'm Scott McCullers. I'm the Fire Operations Chief for the City of Alpharetta. The traffic preemption system here in Alpharetta is installed on all of our traffic lights here locally. We have a transmitter on our apparatus which allows us to basically get a green light as we're responding on incidents throughout the city. The preemption system changes the light directly in front of them, but it also starts staging the other lights ahead of them so that traffic flows better. We've had the system online for about 6 months now, and during that 6 months period, we have realized about an 18% drop in our response times during that time frame. When you're gaining 10 to 12 seconds per traffic light on average, it really has an impact on the response time. We've transitioned from an older system that was infrared or line of sight to a newer system that's GPS based, and it seems to be working great.
I mean, those statistics are just amazing. 18% improvement in response times. What does that actually mean?
Well, seconds count. And one of the things that I did as a fire chief in talking to my elected officials, we talked about systems, we talked about the impact on responding emergency. And I said something in one of our meetings about saving a minute. And some of them said, that's a minute, that's 60 seconds. Does it really make that big a difference in 60 seconds? And I said, yeah, hold your breath. I said, what? Hold your breath. If you're the person that's not breathing, if you're the person that's in cardiac arrest, 60 seconds can be a lifetime. And if we can pick up those seconds safely, not by driving erratically, not by speeding, but if we can pick those seconds up safely, we're going to make a difference in people's lives. And as Chief McCullers said, they gained that much over another system as they move to the new technology, which is a huge step. So if you're moving from zero preemption to a preemption system, you're going to see a major improvement in your response time. The other piece to me that's become really important is sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And with the glance system, the amount of data that you're able to pull from the system and look at and learn about your responses. There may be things you've never even thought of that you would want to change in your response profile because now you have the data. Many departments don't really know what their turnout time is, and turnout time is a defined section in the national standard and what fire departments are supposed to do. From the time the alarm is sounded in the fire station till the time the fire truck leaves the fire station is their turnout time. Well, that's very hard to measure. Glance can give you the opportunity to actually measure that because you know what your dispatch time is from the time the call comes in from your CAD system. And we know exactly what time the fire truck rolled out because the glance system picks them up. The second they pop those brakes and turn on their red lights, we know exactly when they're moving. And we know exactly when they get to the scene and put on their parking brake. So we can actually give a fire chief not only he has total response time, you know, from the time the call comes in, they got call handling time, and then they got alarm time, and then they got response time. We can actually give the fire chief travel time so that he can work or she can work with their traffic engineer and say, you know, are there things that we can do in our response? One of the things some fire apparatus operators have told me is they had, because they had busy corridors, gotten in the habit of going through neighborhoods to try to avoid the traffic. And which makes sense from, if you're driving a fire truck, that makes perfect sense. I'm gonna go where there's the least traffic. Well, then you're concerned about them maybe hitting a child, hitting a pedestrian, or neighbors complaining about fire trucks ripping through the neighborhood. Well, with the glance system, they can go back to those major corridors where you really want them through controlled intersections, and those intersections are under the fire department's control. So it's all about being able to control that response from start to finish. You manage that response, and you provide a better product for the citizens, which is why we exist in the first place.
Now, one of the things that Marietta implemented was a way for the drivers to actually track when they didn't get a green light, because you guys got so confident with the system there that if you did not receive a green light, we thought the system was broken, which is true. The system is broken if you're not getting a green light. Because of the cellular communication and the radio and all the rest, you should always receive a green light being a fire emergency vehicle. But how did you go about doing that, or how did they go about doing that?
We did a couple of things. We worked internally. We created a work order system with our IT department so that, and the rule is very simple. If you don't get a green light, that's a red flag. So if you don't have a green light, you go on a call, you pass any intersection in the city of Marietta, you don't get a green light on the response, that is a huge red flag. And the first thing you do after filling out your fire report is fill out that work order on the system. That work order goes back to our traffic department, and then Applied Information has great customer service. So if you really had a question as a firefighter, you can always call Applied Information and ask. But we work it through the traffic department because they're the first line of defense to go out and take care of that system. We also created a monthly meeting called the Marietta Monitoring Meeting. And we have everybody, the IT department, the electrical department many times, the traffic department and the fire department, along with Applied Information and their distributor, Temple Engineering. They come in many times, and we all sit down and talk about what are the health reports on the intersection. And again, back to that data piece. Your traffic folks are getting tons of data from Applied Information on the traffic management. How's it working? Is anything broken? They know that before anybody can call it in. And so we're monitoring those reports. You also get a vehicle health report, intersection health report, that you can look at. The fire department has one person, a commander that's assigned, and they watch after that system, and they do reviews on a timely basis to make sure that everything's working in the system. The current fire chief there, Chief Tim Milligan, has sort of a saying that I've really adopted and I really like, that preemption system is as critical a piece of safety equipment as your self-contained breathing apparatus. So it is something that is paid a lot of attention to because the folks in the fire department believe in it. They have come to rely on it and believe in it and realize that it makes their job easier and better and allows them to do their job just much better.
So one of the things that Chief Tim Milligan told me was, like you said, the preemption is one of the 4 or 5 most critical systems that everybody needs to check every single morning. So part of their process was actually going out and testing, making sure, because that's how critical they see it. I mean, is it really that critical?
It is absolutely that critical because it allows you to have confidence you're not going to be in an accident and you're not going to cause anybody else to be in an accident. It is that important because, I mean, when I retired from Marietta, they were running about 13,000 emergency calls. We do that more than we do anything else. I mean, driving on emergency runs is what we are doing on a daily basis, 24/7 is running emergency. We don't have big fires every day. We don't have critical EMS calls every day, but we have calls. And they run an emergency on all of those calls. And when they run that many emergency calls, I mean, it is a high risk, high probability type of situation. So not only is it high frequency, because there are so many, it's high risk. And so when you've got something in that risk behavior that's in both corners of high risk and high frequency, that's something that you need to pay attention to as a fire chief.
All right, I believe, Jessica, that we've got some questions. Do you want to go ahead and pepper us with questions? And while I say that, please, everybody, ask us questions. Chief Jackie Gibbs is a wealth of knowledge here, and it's good to pick his brain.
Totally. We'll start with the first one. We have someone asking, what kind of funding and grants are available for both cities and fire agencies to utilize to purchase the preemption units?
That is one of the things that you really have to be creative to get the grants. A lot of grants, more grants may be available in the traffic department. In the fire service, you would have to be very creative in writing the grants. But it is a safety situation, so some of the national grants that are out there are available through the federal government. But you would, it would be an innovative grant that I think that they would look for in the safety arena. So the fire service can pay attention to those types of grants, but I would never not look at our traffic folks and look for some of those technology innovation grants that you can have a piece of it. We have one city in Georgia that recently got a grant to put in preemption as part of a traffic system because they wrote it as a safety innovation through their traffic department. So don't be afraid to go after those multiple type grants on different platforms.
And there's also other things like there's a bunch of connected vehicle grant application opportunities that you can go after. Obviously, the funding that Marietta had was
SPLOST.
the
That
SPLOST
was special
funding.
purpose local option sales tax. But again, those are things that the fire service traditionally had not had the benefit of. And once they looked at it from the system standpoint for the whole city government, we met the definition and were able to work with our local government officials. And the public actually voted for it and gave us the money. So that was a positive thing.
And because this whole system's got a connected vehicle aspect to it, there's another line of funding that you can go after to get the funding for these types of projects. So great question. And by the way, what we can do is if you reach out to us at sales@appinfoinc.com, what we'll do is we'll actually get back to you with local area funding with our partners in that local area that you are actually in, because they know a lot more of where you can find the funding, and it's very localized often.
I would mention one more thing that we've recommended to a couple of people that I'm not sure they've taken advantage of. It's surprising how many community improvement districts there are located in a lot of cities. and some of the businesses pay additional taxes, and they are really looking for something that's innovative where they're able to help the public safety environment. I mean, that's what it's about, is improving the community. And it's very interesting that through the chambers of commerce and some of these types of folks, don't be bashful about asking. I mean, it's surprising that these CIDs see that as new and innovative and something that the public could really buy into.
And that happened right here. That happened right here. The city paid for some of the intersections, and then the CID
kicked in
a whole bunch of money to do a whole ranging of other intersections around the area. And that then gets a bunch of other cities and people involved in mutual aid calls.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of benefits that come in there. Jessica, what's the next question?
Awesome. So you guys spoke a lot about the reports that are available on Glance and the value of data there. Is there data to show the routes taken on the emergency response, like with time details, and is that archived, or is that only available for a certain time?
No,
Great.
it's very much archived, and it's very much available to them. It is something that they can go on themselves, and they look at here's a trip report, and this shows the replay of the trail that the fire truck actually took on a call. And it also gives you not only the emergency runs, but it gives you the day-to-day activities of the fire truck to look at, you know, as far as them doing their inspections and that sort of thing. It's all captured because it's GPS based, and it rides along with the fire truck, so it's there.
And you can even click anywhere on the trail and it'll pop up some information of what was happening at that location, exact time of event. So that's how we know exactly when the emergency lights were turned on, when he arrived at scene. And then there's a whole bunch of other information like this trip report that tells you. Actually, this was an interesting one for Odessa, Texas, which they did a lot of mutual aid calls.
Right.
And so we did the service trips within the city and out of area service trips. And what this gave us was within the city, they had an average response time of 3 minutes and 36 seconds. But on the mutual aid calls, out of their city limits, it was 7 minutes. But what happened was, they were reporting an average of like 5.5 minutes for their ISO ratings. And they were like, man, we're doing way better than that. Until we actually took the data and looked at it. And now actually, you know, one of the things as well with the CID funding and things like that, if you can show that your response times go down, you become a class 1 agency versus a class 2 or class 3, which affects the ISO, which affects insurance for businesses.
And it's one of the things that's happening, and I think lots of fire chiefs are thinking about it and looking at it as the insurance world is going performance based. They measure fire departments a lot of different ways, but over time and into the future, it is going to be performance measurements. What are you actually doing? And they're looking already at fire loss within zip code districts to classify fire departments in the insurance world. So your performance is going to be measured, like it or not, over what you actually can show and what you can do. And this system gives you hard facts on your travel time, hard facts on your turnout time, hard facts that you can work with on your total response time in delivering the service. So it's not just, okay, I've got fire stations here, here, and here. It's how fast are you getting in an efficient and effective and safe way to every corner of your jurisdictions. So as they did with Odessa, you can actually document what part you're doing inside your jurisdiction and then what part you're serving outside your jurisdiction. It brings up another point. This system is totally adaptable for mutual aid. So once the system is into the traffic cabinets, in the corridors and within the traffic system, you can add it to your mutual aid partners. That's no problem. You just add the transmitter box to their fire apparatus or to the ambulances, and they can take advantage of the preemption system as well. And if they have a system next door, then you can take advantage of theirs.
And that happened exactly, for instance, in Marietta, they have the CobLink buses that travel through there. And what they did was they put in, the little transponder box into the buses, and because they already had all the equipment in the actual cabinets, they could now do bus priority. And now they've got bus priority on 50 or 75 buses, something like that.
Right.
Where they're actually now providing priority on the buses along those corridors. So, it adds, and we'll get into a little bit more of the details of some of the other features of the system. But before I do that, I know Jessica's got more questions for us.
I have one more. We have someone asking y'all to speak to the management of conflicting requests for the same intersection. So if there's 2 fire trucks or a fire and an EMS or fire and a police, how does Glance handle that?
Glance handles that as first come, first serve, and what we always would tell any driver of an emergency vehicle, drive what you see in the windshield. So you would never assume that you're going to get a green light. You never make that assumption. Back when I was talking about the other jurisdiction, they slowed down as they approached the intersection just to be ready. If you're driving a fire truck, you always want to be ready for something to go wrong. And so it handles it on a first come, first served basis. But the benefit of this system is as that vehicle clears that intersection, and obviously if they're coming from an opposing direction, you're going to know they're coming. If it's one of your colleagues, you're going to see them pass. Well, that system can recover very quickly, and then you're going to get your turn at the green light. So it is extremely fast, and it does handle it on the first come, first serve.
Yeah, it queues up everything. So as Chief Jackie Gibbs was saying, if you've got one emergency vehicle coming this direction, as soon as he's through, it'll give the next guy his pass. Now, it is different if you've got a bus coming through and the emergency vehicle will start to take over operation of that traffic signal because it's got a much higher priority. And you can prioritize these things. We recommend highly first come, first serve basis because that's the way it should be done.
Well, and operationally, from the fire department perspective, that's going to be the right way because, the overwhelming majority of the time, pretty much which direction they're going to be coming from. They can always be out doing inspections and that sort of thing. And the system works no matter which way you're coming from, and you're always going to get that. But the first come seems to work the best.
And because it's estimated time of arrival, you don't have one vehicle coming through. The first one comes through and says, I'm 23 seconds away from the signal. And the second one comes through and he's 42 seconds away from the signal. As soon as he's 30 feet past that signal, it stops his request and goes straight away to the next vehicle. Yeah. So it's a very seamless system in terms of taking over the multiple different requests.
And you bring up a great point, Peter, something that we didn't mention. You're thinking if you're a firefighter or a fire chief and you're thinking, well, I have lots of traffic and the traffic backs up a long ways at traffic signals, and how is it ever going to catch up? Well, the beauty of the Glance system is it's very smart, and it's following your fire truck, and that zone is set up with an ETA, and if that system sees your fire truck slow down or stop, it starts changing the lights ahead of it to flush all of that traffic out of your way. So not only is it working on the light immediately in front of the fire truck, it's working on every other light around there because it knows there's an emergency response taking place, and it's just waiting its turn. So the whole system is very smart, and it pays attention to what's happening all throughout the area that the Glance system is installed.
And there's even something called adaptive preemption. So because we're tracking the vehicle speed, if we see that vehicle's far away from the signal but slows down due to traffic, we can call an early preempt request that will start flashing all that traffic ahead. Because I know those were some of the situations that you guys had that put in medians and you just couldn't get to the signal. You couldn't get through.
And that's, we had, and that was one of the reasons for the system as well, is we had a lot of streetscapes, a lot of boulevard type designs with high medians and trees, and they really look nice, but they create a cattle chute for the fire service, and there was nowhere to go. So the preemption system really made a huge difference because it flushes that traffic out, gets them on out of the way, so you're not trying to get through a boulevard or a corridor type situation. Flushes the traffic out of the way, fire truck can just roll right through the intersection at a safe speed and go on their call.
So I want to change gears a little bit. You talked about how we could get connected with the different departments, transit and traffic. Now, what's in it for traffic? Why do they want to also go and deploy something like this?
Well, our traffic engineers wanted the communication with their traffic system. And fire chief can talk to your traffic folks, and the number one complaint is the traffic signal's on the fritz, something's not working. Well, they would have to wait for the police or somebody to call and report that signal. Now with the Glance system, they have communication with their traffic cabinets 24/7. And so if that cabinet goes into flash, has a problem, it sends an alert to their cell phone. And they know before they ever even leave the shop or before they ever even leave home, they know what signals has a problem, what's wrong with the signal, and what they need to do to get that signal back in operation. It saved them overtime because they knew what was going on with their system 24/7. The public expects that. They expect the traffic system to work. So this was a major benefit for our traffic folks, is that communication piece with all of their traffic systems. It also did one more thing. We had a problem with a traffic signal that was just giving us fits. I mean, the traffic guys were tearing their hair out because they couldn't figure out what the problem was with this signal. Well, having the Glance system on it showed that we had a little problem with the power. And so the electricity on occasion was having a little blip in the system, and they were able to go back to the power company because the power company couldn't see it. They just thought, well, the power's on. And so they were able to go back to the power company and say, no, look at this spot right here where the power's doing this. Well, they were able to trace down a minor problem in the power, but it was causing the traffic system a difficulty, which caused the public a difficulty. So it's great. It's a great improvement in the system.
Yeah, and one of the other things that we've seen, that the cities really like is, it's got all of that, but the remote communication. So if you've got a traffic signal system, tactics, Centrax, whatever it is, and the ability of getting video. So all of the video detection cameras that they have, or PTZ cameras, they can actually get the video back. And where this comes into operation for emergency services is amazing. And you had a story of one of the agencies that was utilizing this for video during one of the hurricanes.
We absolutely used it because it gave us, visual observation of the city streets. During a storm situation, we were able to stand in the emergency management center and look out across the city using the camera system. And so we had situational awareness, live situational awareness of what was going on out in our streets. So it was a major benefit during an emergency situation.
And also the power failure stuff, because that's a huge thing, seeing where all the power failure events are so you can send the services out.
It just gives you situational awareness of what's happening in the city to the highest level and the best level. So the communication piece is really significant in your partnership with your traffic engineers.
And one of the other things the traffic department likes is they can actually go into the traffic signals and they can make changes and things like that. This allows them to actually go in and see the traffic controller just as if it's right in front of them. But this is the benefit of a system like this, is it will allow the traffic department and the fire department to both have a benefit. And then, often what we've seen is people delving into two different funding sources, some from the traffic, some from the fire, some agencies that are delving into three different sources with the transit side. So you've got three different areas and three different areas of funding that they're utilizing to pay for a system like this.
They're not only paying for the system, but they're benefiting each of those departments, and it makes it so much easier to sell and so much easier to believe in it, because you can show for each department the benefit back to the services that they're providing for the taxpayers. And in these kind of budget times, it's what we do. I mean, fire chiefs are looking for ways, go ahead, go out there and try to justify additional personnel in the budget environment we are now, or try to justify additional fire stations or additional fire equipment. Those are big ticket items, whereas this is an opportunity for technology to benefit several departments and provide a faster, more efficient, and safer, on top of everything else, a safer system of delivery.
And one of the other things that pushed the city of Marietta to actually go and deploy the system was the ability of connecting to citizens.
Right.
And there's this whole connected vehicle world behind all of this. Do you want to explain a little bit about the connected vehicle aspect behind this and how it's very future thinking?
It really is, and at first blush you think, well, I'm not going to go buy a new car, so the connected vehicle thing doesn't matter to me. Well, that's the benefit of the Glance system. It gives you connected vehicle type technology today. And that was important for the city as they purchased and moved into the system, is through your cell phone. It's a free app. You can get the Travel Safely app, and any cell phone can download it. You can have it in your car, and it gives you situational awareness about your traffic system. So as you're driving down the road, you see the traffic signals on your phone before you can even see the signal. You know whether it's green, yellow, or red. And if you're sitting at the traffic signal, it will tell you over your phone to get ready for the green light. The other thing that I really liked from the fire department standpoint, and I got to see this in action just the other day in my own personal car, is I was sitting at a red light, back numerous cars in the lineup, and the light was red, so I was sitting there waiting, and all of a sudden I got an alert that said emergency vehicle front. And over the hill comes one of the Marietta's finest fire trucks on an emergency call, and I had a red light, and they came right past me with a green light, just rolled right through a perfectly safe intersection because everybody else was stopped. So before I could even see or hear the fire truck coming, my phone sitting up on the dash in its cradle told me I had an emergency vehicle approaching. Well, if you're driving, you got your radio on and not paying attention, and your cell phone tells you emergency vehicle rear, you know you got a fire truck coming up behind you and you can get over, or from your right if you can't see around the corner, or from the left. So it gives you connected vehicle type technology in your old 1974 Chevrolet pickup truck. You can just sit right there and you can be like the fanciest car on the road because you've got connected vehicle technology. And that's something that, you know, from a city management or an elected official standpoint, they're giving the public. You know, they're able to give that back to the public for their tax dollars.
And it's very visual as well.
It's very visual.
And the elected officials understand an app.
They sure
now,
do.
When you tell them that the traffic light's going to work better, what does that mean? How do you
Right.
explain that to the citizen? But hey, we're going to provide you with an application that's going to make the traffic lights work better for you. That's something they can explain very simply.
And it'll alert you if you're about to run a red light. And if you've got a pedestrian or a cyclist, somebody on a bicycle, bike trails are a big deal these days, and they're coming up beside you, they have the app running on their phone. It will alert you that there's a cyclist, that you're about to run over somebody, or that there's a pedestrian about to stop. And nobody wants to hit somebody. I mean, the last thing in the world you want to do is hit a pedestrian. So the improvement in safety and just awareness as you're driving your car is really up and goes up with the technology.
Well, let's have a look at what this technology looks like. We've got a
Great.
short little video here of Travel Safely and how it all works.
Meet Travel Safely, an app that helps you get where you're going safely. Travel Safely works if you're driving, walking, biking, wheeling, scooting, or skating. Get real-time audio notifications,
Red light.
so you can focus on your surroundings. Get notified when you're approaching a red light, or when it's time to get ready for green.
Get ready for green.
Travel Safely works with local emergency vehicles, helping them respond to calls faster. Get notified when an emergency vehicle is approaching,
Emergency vehicle front.
or when to share the road with your two-wheeled friend.
Cyclist. Vehicle approaching cyclist.
Travel Safely tells you when you're passing a school or work zone. and if you need to slow it down. So whether you're on the road or just crossing,
Pedestrian.
every time you open Travel Safely, you're helping make a better commuting experience for all of us. Together. Download the Travel Safely app today and join our community of users committed to making our roads safer.
And you can see how that's a system that's trying to bring the community together. Bring the community. It's the first time actually you getting the community to buy into the traffic system and buy into providing information back. And they actually get a benefit as well. You know, one of the features that we've been doing is giving, just like we do emergency vehicles, giving them priority is detecting cyclists. You know, the one thing that happens with a cyclist, they ride up to a traffic light, signal never goes green for them, and then they run through a red light because it just doesn't detect them. So they go early in the morning, and that's a very dangerous situation. Right. So we're using the same technology to tell the traffic light that a cyclist is coming, so it can go green for the cyclist, as well as if multiple cyclists come, they can get a priority request like a bus. And this is the whole idea of using smart technology to actually provide a major benefit to the traveling public.
And it's something that people really do pay attention to. The taxpayers, you know, they'll go along with a lot of things, but at the same time, they want to see that benefit from their local governments. They want to know what are they getting from their tax dollars. They also don't like traffic. I mean, everybody that sits in traffic doesn't like it. So the things that we can do as local government officials to help make that experience better, well, we've just done something for our taxpayers. We've actually started to, you know, we're serving our purpose and serving the people that have hired us. And it's good for us to do. In my view, it's important for us to do, to give back to the public everything that we can to make their lives better. That's why we exist.
And I just want to, you know, just while we're wrapping up, I want to just please ask everybody, reach out to us. You know, we've got a wealth of knowledge here on how to go out and talk to your elected officials and get funding approved. Use Jackie Gibbs, use his knowledge in all of this, and reach out to us if you guys want to learn a little bit more about the technology, what goes in the cabinet, what goes in the vehicle. We can set up a one-on-one session with you and anyone else, you know, the fire department, the traffic department, the transit department. That way you can bring in all of this and we can talk about how to strategize to get money approved for the city, or how this technology can help you in multiple other areas.
Right. And if you need data, if you want to write a grant proposal and you need information to fill out on the grant proposal, don't hesitate to call. We're happy to try to help you develop those answers to those questions that will make your grant something that's appealing as the reviewers look at it, something that they'll want to fund.
So reach out to sales@appinfoinc.com. That's appinfoinc.com. Sales@appinfoinc.com. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel. We've got lots of great content that's coming through, and really appreciate everyone's time. So with that, I want to thank you, Chief Jackie Gibbs, for joining us today. And until the next session, we'd love to see you there. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Bye, everybody.